All right, today we're joined by Simon Willison. He is the co-creator of Django, worked for The Guardian, and was most recently a JSK fellow at Stanford. Also is doing some work on the Vaccinate CA, Vaccinate California, and Vaccinate the States projects here in the US. But most importantly, for our purposes, he is the creator of Datasette, the free open source database platform we've been using this week. And I'm really glad to have Simon here with us to talk a little bit about that. Simon, thank you so much for being here.
Hey, it's great to be here. I'm really excited to talk about things with you all.
It's super great. I guess I just wanted to start out by asking you a little bit about what inspired you to build Datasette and why you sort of give it away for free for all of us to use and use in our journalism.
So the original idea, so I started working on the project about 3.5 years ago, but it was based on work I was doing at The Guardian nearly 10 years ago now, where at The Guardian in London, when I joined The Guardian, I got to talk to all sorts of people around the organization to find out what was going on. And there was this one reporter, Simon Rogers, who was the infographics data person. If you want to put a chart or a map in the paper, he was the person you'd go to. And he had this ability to find any data on anything in the world. He knew who to call at the Russian culture minister to get hold of numbers on whatever it was. And I asked him, well, what do you do with all this data? And he showed me a folder on his desktop computer under his desk with hundreds of beautiful Excel spreadsheets, like absolutely meticulous data about all sorts of things all around the world that was just sat there under his desk. And I said, you know, have you sort of shown this to the engineering team upstairs? Because they're the kinds of people who get really excited about this. And so we started batting around ideas. Okay, how can we make more of this? How can we share this data with the world? And so we ended up thinking, okay, well, the easiest thing is we'll start a blog. We started a thing called the Guardian Data Blog. And the idea was to publish the numbers behind the stories. And so we put out a story in the paper with numbers behind it. And then the data blog would publish the spreadsheet. And we used Google Sheets, right? It was free. You stick the data in, people know how to use it. And that was how we were sharing all of these meticulously collected data sets about interesting things around the world. And this worked. And it was, I mean, I'm super excited that we got it to happen. But I always felt like Google Sheets shouldn't be the be all and end all of data publication. You know, there's got to be a way of publishing data that isn't like proprietary and tied up with one company, that gives you the flexibility as end developers to export that data back out again and do interesting things with it. And then 3.5 years ago, I was looking at this new trend of serverless hosting providers in the technology industry, where you can essentially host applications almost for free, provided they're very simple. They're just they don't have any like reads and writes going on. They're just presenting data. And I realized that if you took a bunch of data, stuck it in a SQL-like database file, because then it's just a single binary file, and shipped that with the rest of your application, you could solve the problem I had at The Guardian. You could share data sets online in a way that gave people full flexibility for what they could do with them, and cost like a few cents a month if it's a low traffic project, which for data journalism is so important, because you might have 100 stories a year coming out of a newsroom. The last thing you want to do is pay $5 per project for 100 different projects. So that was the original idea. And I started building it again 3.5 years ago, and trying to grow very much with this idea of publishing the data behind news stories, like sharing data set. It should be the best way to publish and share data sets online. And as the project developed, I began to realize that it's applicable for things outside of news. You know, it turns out every organization in the world has data problems now, and they're not necessarily these big data. We need a 10 petabyte data warehouse and spend $1 million a year on it. A lot of it's data that will quite easily fit on your laptop, but once something's too big for Excel, there's a surprisingly small amount of tools for working with it. So I've started thinking about Datasette as looking at the small data end of the scale, which is data that fits on your laptop, which for most people, it's all the data you could possibly want. It's I'm exploring personal data as well. Like as an individual, what's the data about myself that I can gather? But yeah, so that was the idea. The original idea was data behind the news for news stories. And now it's grown to anything that's small data that you might want to publish and share with the world.
It's so great. And you've been, I mean, based on your background in journalism, and I know from corresponding with you on Twitter, you've been super supportive of newsrooms doing this and actually reaching out saying, hey, I will help you learn how to do this. So that's been super great. Who's using this now? I mean, where do you know that it's out there in the world?
So this is a really interesting problem with doing free open source software, is that people can use it and not tell you about it.
That's right.
So I know for a fact that ProPublica use this quite extensively internally, and there have been stories that they've published which use Datasette as part of the sort of the sausage making, and that thrills me. I've seen a few local governments in Europe have started experimenting with it. Helsinki, Finland has a Datasette instance that they're running, which is again super exciting. And then I just keep on hearing little bits of evidence from reporters and people working at different publications. So I know it's out there. I know there's a newspaper in Connecticut that's investing quite heavily in it. So it's beginning to spin. It's one of those things where you sort of push the rock up the hill for 3.5 years and it's starting to show signs of rolling on its own, which is great. But yeah, hopefully if you ask me that question again in 6 months, I'll be able to rattle off a much more solid list of names of people who are definitely using it.
It's so great. And you know, the thing that I've always run into, and I've been working in data journalism a long time too, and the thing that I always wrestled with, like often, was that exact problem you described. Your data is getting a little bit too big for Excel or Google Sheets, and maybe you want to do some more interesting, ask more interesting questions of it that just makes it hard to do in a pivot table or something. And the biggest hurdle is always like, ugh, I gotta spin up a database. How do I do that? And that was what was so exciting for me when I first ran across Datasette. I was like, holy cow, this is all like figured out, which is kind of your point. And the way that I've sort of found to be the fastest way to do it is what the class has done this week is, you know, spinning it up on Glitch, which is pretty much free if you're just doing the basic stuff, and dragging a file in, and that just works. And I don't even have to think about it. But that's not the only way to do it, right? I mean, if somebody wanted to take this maybe to the next level, how would you recommend they host this?
So for me, a big part of the Datasette sort of philosophy is making it as easy to host as possible, because hosting stuff is really hard, right? Setting up servers and running them on the internet, even in 2021, is still like, I've been doing this for 20 years and I'm afraid to do it because I know that in a year and a half it'll break because the log files on the server filled up or something, and I'll have to figure out how to get it running again. So the Datasette documentation has a bunch of options. My preferred options at the moment are, for small projects, I really like Vercel because it's completely free, and deployments, it takes like 30 seconds to deploy. It's really fast to get something out there. The catch with Vercel is it has an upper size limit of, I think, 50 or 100 megabytes, which for many projects is fine. The moment I go above that, I turn to Google Cloud Run, which is a relatively new Google service. They launched it just over a year ago. And it's one of these, it's scaled to 0, which means that if no one's using, you're not getting any traffic, your site doesn't cost you any money. So I've got lots of projects on there that cost me 30 to 50 cents a month, and a few that cost like $20 a month because they actually draw a sizable amount of traffic. The great thing about Cloud Run is, size-wise, it's supposedly unlimited. I find it works up to about 1 gigabyte or 1.5 gigabytes of data. Once you get above 2 gigabytes, you start to see errors and things. But 1 gigabyte is a lot, right? There are so many interesting things that you can fit in that. So yeah, I think so. My recommendation is Vercel for the small projects and Cloud Run for the bigger projects at the moment. And there becomes a point where it's worth running Datasette on its own server using Ubuntu or something. And I've got a little bit of documentation for that as well, but I'd suggest not doing that unless you have some experience with Linux systems administration.
Right on. Okay, 1 second. I want to make sure I get this question right. Okay, so one of the things is when you do host it that way in one of these systems, maybe in Vercel or on Google Cloud Run, the kind of cool thing about that, and I found that even on my own laptop, is that you can add plugins and you can add features to Datasette, and people are making new features to it all the time because it's open source software, which is really cool. Earlier in the week, we experimented a little bit with turning on the full text search, which is a plugin that's added on, and we could do right there in Glitch. Could you tell us a little bit about some of the other cool things? Because I've seen you show some of this before, and I would love if you would share some of the other sort of things that Datasette can do with some of these extra plugins that are also free.
Let's do that. So the beauty of plugins is that people can build features for Datasette, and I'm not even involved. Like, I can literally wake up one morning and the software's grown a feature, and that's amazing, right? In open source, that's the best possible way of your software expanding. And they also give me the freedom to try out stupid ideas. Like, often I will have an idea that if I put it in Datasette, it would make the software worse. But if I put it in a plugin, it's just a fun thing to try out. That's a completely safe way for me to experiment with new things. Nice. So I'll show you my favorite plugin. Actually, this is the first plugin I ever wrote. Okay, so this is a plugin. It's called Datasette Cluster Map because it's a map that puts clusters of markers on there. And so this right here is a map of all of my Foursquare swarm check-ins over the past decade. Which looks really fun when you look at it over 10 years. If I look at it over the last year, it's all centered around the San Francisco Bay Area.
Your house.
But what's neat about this is that this is showing me 5,000 points on a map, and that just works. And it turns out I put 100,000 points on this. And to my surprise, browsers and computers are fast these days, so you can do that. You can see it gives you a fair amount of information. You can see that I went to Hawaii at some point. I can zoom in and see parts of California that I've explored and so on. This actually is running in, and the way this plugin works is you install it. It's called Datasette Cluster Map, and then anytime you look at a view that has latitude and longitude columns, it kicks in. So that's all it does. Is it says if there's a latitude and longitude, draw a map and try and put everything on that map. One fun thing I like to do with this demo is these are all of my swarm check-ins, but every time I check in somewhere with my dog, Cleo, I use the wolf emoji in the little check-in message, which means that I can use this map to see her check-ins. So I can say everything with a shout contains that wolf emoji. And now this is a map of all of the places that my dog has been. Here we go. These are all of her favorite places. And then because one of my absolute favorite features in Datasette is the ability to facet, which is kind of like pivot tables. So I can say, you know what, show me the venue categories that my dog likes. And you can see that she loves parks and dog runs, but she's also really keen on coffee shops and beaches. And if I click on coffee shops, I can see a personalized map of coffee shops that my dog has been to. And then if I click CSV, I can get out a CSV file of coffee shops that my dog likes. So this is obviously the end goal of the software is to support being able to do a CSV file of coffee shops that my dog likes.
It's a perfect theme for our work too, because we've been spending a couple of weeks on New York City dog license database data. So this is perfect. Hey, before you go on, can you just show that facet thing again? It's something I haven't touched on, and I think it's really, really important. Just show again where to find the faceting.
So the way faceting works is sometimes it will suggest a facet, and it does that based on, are there less than 20 unique values for this? So sometimes that'll kick in automatically, sometimes it won't. But the easier way to do it is you can click on the cog icon next to any of these columns and click facet by this. And so in this case, I think we faceted by venue categories. I'm going to add an additional facet of venue name. And what this will do is it'll show you the, like, Alamo Square Dog Park is Cleo's favorite dog park to go to, for example. And then if I click on beach, these things all combine together. So now I'm just seeing the beach check-ins. And so the venue name is now showing me just the beaches that she likes. So this is saying East Beach is her favorite beach, and then she likes Ocean Beach. But the key thing about facets is, from a sort of data analysis point of view, this is pretty much the simplest thing you can do. It's count the things and look at the things that are most common. And I find that on almost any data set, this is actually 80% of the value in analyzing a data set comes from looking at these facets. You can fire up opioid prescription data or COVID numbers or whatever it is, and take a million rows of data. And actually PPP loans is a really good thing to look at for this. So you've got a million rows of data. The moment you turn on the facet, you're like, oh, that's interesting. It turns out dentists are one of the highest like the organization type that gets the most PPP loans. What's going on there? And then you can dive in and say, oh, facet by state. Oh, look, California has the most dentists who claimed on this thing. So it's an incredibly productive way of getting your head around a big data set. Like when you look at 1 million rows of data, it's very easy to think, okay, what am I even going to do with this? But once you've got 1 million rows of data and you start faceting it, the insights can quickly start jumping out at you. I mean, the other thing else,
Oh, I was just going to say two things about that. For those of you not in the US, the PPP loans were the government loans around the COVID pandemic. And so that's what Simon was talking about. But also, it's so interesting because in the first week of this class, we actually used pivot tables to do exactly just this thing. Like all of those steps to learn pivot tables is basically what you have just done in a couple of clicks.
I've got a demo. I hope it still works. Have you seen the squirrel census data?
No.
So I really hope this. Yes, it does. Okay, so a bunch of people did a census of all of the squirrels in Central Park, which is a very valuable.
In New York City.
It's amazing. There's 3,000 rows. And each row has the position of the squirrel, what color its fur was, its highlight color, and all of that. And of course, this is great because I can facet. I can say facet by primary fur color, and I can see that the most common one was gray, but there were 392 cinnamon squirrels. And I can drill down on the cinnamon squirrels and then say, show me their highlight fur color. And of those cinnamon squirrels, black, there were 10 that had a black, all of that kind of thing. But again, this is just showing you that you start with 3,000 rows, and with 2 clicks, I'm learning something about the Central Park squirrel population.
Simon, thank you so much for spending some time with us today. I really, really appreciate it, and look forward to seeing what else comes.
Cool. Thanks very much. This was really fun.
I hope Simon inspired you to think about ways you might use Datasette in your own work. Our conversation actually went longer and went even deeper into different ways that Datasette could be used for journalism. If that's interesting to you and you haven't had it up to here with databases and Datasette, go ahead and watch video number 14. But it's optional. If you'd like, you can skip it and just wait for the next video and the next module where we will be making charts and maps using Data Wrapper.